The Digital Equipment Computer User Society presents this live recording from the 1985 Spring DECUS U.S. Symposium, held May 27th through the 31st. We take you to New Orleans, Louisiana, where the program is just now beginning. The following material is for informational purposes only, and is subject to change without notice. Neither DEC, the author, nor DECUS assume any responsibility for the material, its use, or applications.
The Rainbow Communication Solutions, and I'd like to introduce Bill Hunter. He's the product manager for communications and networks for the Personal Computing Systems Group, which is the new alias for the Rainbow Working Group. So that I've been told the new name is so that everyone can interface better to make the products more usable for the end users, us, so that everyone can talk in DEC now. And so I'd like to introduce Bill Hunter to you, who's going to be telling us all the new things, right?
Thank you. Okay, as the title of the session indicated, this is going to be a session on Rainbow Communications Solutions. We'll talk about the capabilities of the hardware, the software that we have for the Rainbow, and where it can be used. We won't go into too much detail on the hardware. That'll be covered in more detail at the technical session, which follows at 11 o'clock. I mentioned we'll go through a brief overview of the hardware, the facilities available for the operating system, but the major concentration for this will be on the application software that's available and how to make effective use of protocol converters. First, for the hardware, we can start off with the base standard communications port, and it's built into every Rainbow. Supports full duplex, synchronous, and asynchronous operation. The synchronous operation can support byte synchronous, so that you can implement bisync protocols, as well as bit synchronous protocols to take advantage of HDLC type applications. The functionality of the port conforms to RS-232, and the electrical interface is basically an intersection of RS-232 and 423 standards. The RS-423 provides, among other things, better distance to speed ratios, which this port provides. In the asynchronous operation, the port can support speeds of up to 19.2 kilobits using internal clocking. Extended communications option has two ports. One port is a general purpose, used for RS-232 type of operation, and there is a special purpose port, which currently we have no use for. The details of the special purpose port I'll go into in the technical session following this. However, the general purpose port is like the base system port, full duplex, can go at speeds up to 19.2 kilobits. Both ports on the extended communications option also have direct memory access capability, so that data can be hustled in and out directly to and from memory without putting extra burden of interrupt handling on the CPU. VT102 emulation, I lump under the hardware side because it is implemented with firmware. Again, it's standard in the base system. You do not need the operating system to do it. You use setup to control the characteristics of the speed and character sets, and it supports the VT102 printer and the print screen keys. Operating system support, it's a little out of date. At this point, we support MS-DOS 2.11 in addition to 2.05. And the support is identical for the MS-DOS systems, CPM 8680 version 2, and concurrent CPM, which is sold by Digital Research. There's a variety of support available in the operating system, and the levels of support range from basically a level where we will do it all for you to a mode where you do just about everything on your own. You essentially tell us where you want the interrupt vectors to dispatched to you, and you have it. It supports all 3 ports: the standard communications port, the printer port, and the port B of the extended communications option. Port A on that option is so special purpose we didn't even want to touch that one. Okay. There are 2 levels of software interfaces for it, basically at a task level and an interrupt service level. Okay. Now, to the meat of the talk this morning, the application software. What applications are available, and how do I use those to more effectively use the Rainbow in a communications environment? 2 major areas that I'll concentrate on this morning are communications with other DEC systems and communications with IBM systems. We pretty much have to cover IBM, I think, as much as we're all DEC-oriented here and would like to see IBM go away. That probably won't happen. So it's certainly to our advantage to let the users know how we can communicate with the IBM systems that are in their shops. We'll also touch briefly on communications with other personal computers and other companies' mainframes and minis. Okay. Starting with the connections to other digital systems, we can start with a relatively new product, DECnet Rainbow. There was a session given, I believe, Monday on this. This will probably be a little subset of that session. We view DECnet Rainbow as the first step in integrating personal computers into networks of large mini-computers and super minis. Capabilities of this product: it's an N node of DNA phase 4. You cannot do any routing with it, so the Rainbow must be connected to a routing node or some other routing function. At present, we've implemented an async version of DDCMP. Again, we view that as a starting point. Benefits of DECnet Rainbow. Probably to sum it up very simply, we give you access to departmental and corporate databases at distributed locations, which will allow you to reap the benefits of such things as large disk farms on the VAXs, laser printers, and other very expensive peripherals, and will serve as the basis for development of distributed applications among PCs and minis. Features of DECnet: probably almost everything you always wanted. File transfer, access to remote resources, the ability to function as a terminal to any other host on the system, task-to-task communications for the implementation of distributed applications, and we provide network management functions to help you install, configure, and keep the network up. File transfer provides bidirectional copying of files. RMS attributes are handled by the DECnet. You can delete files on remote systems. A restriction is that file transfer takes place to and from a multitasking DECnet node, which is essentially anything other than a Rainbow or an IBM PC. The restriction here is not within the DECnet product so much as it's with MS-DOS. Current Microsoft MS-DOS does not support multitasking, which is sorely needed to be able to perform background functions and implement things like the file access listeners. Files can also be transferred to or from IBM systems, which are connected to DECnet via the DECnet to SNA gateway. And the file transfer gives you essentially one-step service, which you do not get with current products like the Polycom series, where you first have to use terminal emulation to log into a host and then copy the file up to the VAX and then do another DECnet copy. Remote resource access. Again, you can take advantage of the departmental and corporate resources, use their databases, take space up on their disk farms so that you don't have to buy the disks on your own. There's a virtual printer facility so that transparent to your application, it can actually be outputting to something like a laser printer. And another feature is that you can submit command files to the remote systems. Network command terminal, it uses a new protocol called CTerm to help you do VT100 emulation. There is login support for VMS, RSX, Ultrix, TOPS 20. Again, one-step operation. You don't have to start a terminal emulator, log into your local system, and then do set host. You just say, I want to log into that system, and you don't need to worry yourself about where it is. The network will take care of it for you. Task-to-task communications. I think you can pretty much use your imagination for this one. Almost any application that you want to distribute and possibly share the load between two systems, you could implement with this. This can be used not just from a rainbow to another multitasking node, but actually between two rainbows in this. Because at this point, you're dedicating the whole machine to that function and making use of the subroutine libraries provided within DECnet Rainbow. Network management will provide you with the tools to install, control, and effectively use the Rainbow in your DECnet network. Briefly, the configurations that you need to support DECnet Rainbow: MS-DOS 2.11. You need a minimum of 64K bytes of excess memory for the network driver, disk space, and 12K bytes per network disk driver. And finally, in summary, DECnet Rainbow is... Sure. Okay. DECnet Rainbow is a base to build on. Large system network integration with personal computers. I don't believe any other vendor has that at this point. IBM has plenty of mechanisms to connect their PCs to the mainframes, but that's all as a terminal, not a participant in an integrated network. It's not a PC local area network. It was not intended to be. Again, it's a solution. And it's fully supported and backed by digital. Moving on to other software products, I'd like to go through an overview of two software products that are sold and serviced by digital through the DCS program, the Digital Classified Software Program. These products will allow you to communicate with VAX and RSX systems. The first product to talk about is Polycom, which is available for MS-DOS and CP/M. There are three components to Polycom. Polyterm, which is the VT100 terminal emulation with some value-added features. PolyXfer and host, allowing you to perform error-free file transfer between a Rainbow and a DEC Mini or many other vendors' computers. And finally, Switch, which is designed to allow remote operation of your PC from a terminal or another PC. And these products were developed by Polygon Associates in St. Louis. Polyterm, it's terminal emulation plus value-added features. It has the ability to perform poor man's file transfer and use the disk file in place of the keyboard. Incoming data can be captured to a disk file as well as put on the screen. There are times that you have to use functions like this. If you're entering data into a system that can't handle the input of complete files, such as certain mail systems, you may have to actually compose a file on your local system and then send it up character by character. Printer can be used in Polyterm either as a logging device, where you can continually copy everything that comes in off the line to the printer, or as a VT100 printer. You may define the function keys to represent a series of keystrokes up to, I believe, 49 characters per function key. It has VT52 and ANSI modes, and as far as configurations, you can set up one set of default characteristics, which is for line speed, character length, etc. And you can have any number of special configuration files that you want, so that you can invoke them at any time. Okay. PolyXfer, true file transfer, error-free. It uses complementary programs at each end of the link, one on the rainbow, one on the other end. XFer is the actual name of the program also that's used on the rainbow end. The name of the program on the other end is host. XFer runs the show. They're cooperating programs, but XFer is the master. The system running host will be the passive listener. It's available for VAX, PDP-11, and DECMate from Digital, and for the DEC System 20 from Polygon. Okay. Switch, again, remote operation of the PC. That will allow you to leave a rainbow running, go home, and dial in from there. And you can execute any program on the rainbow that is well behaved, that is, uses the MS-DOS facilities for input and output. An application which tries to go at the screen or the keyboard themselves will not function properly with this. Okay. Phone link from Virtual Microsystems is used for communications with the bridge. The bridge is a software package that runs on a number of minis and mainframes, which allows them to emulate a CPM system. Phone link can be used to perform file transfer between a rainbow and any other system which runs the bridge. Okay. Other products not sold by Digital to perform terminal emulation and file transfer include Kermit, which is public domain, Blast, which is marketed by Communications Research in, I believe, Baton Rouge. They not only have facilities to talk to other DEC systems, but also they have versions available which will talk to DG, HP, and several other vendors. AccuLink from IE Systems in Newmarket, New Hampshire, and of course SmartCom from Hayes. IBM. Basically concentrate on communications to non-PC systems, the mainframes and the mid-range systems. And again, this is to promote how Rainbow can be used in those environments. And believe me, we can all use your help in helping to make your companies aware of that. This is an indication of which IBM systems that the Rainbow can communicate. You can start at the top to the large mainframe line, the 370 class machines, the 4300 smaller scale mainframes, and the 30XX series of large mainframes. Continuing clockwise, we get to the 8100, which is sometimes thought of as a key system in the IBM line. The 8100 can be used as communications concentrators and network nodes, as well as in a distributed data processing environment. Continuing, we hit the personal computer. Not going to stress that much at all. There is basically a 2780 communications packages available for the PC, and we have them also, so the two of those can communicate. Series 1 we can communicate with also as a terminal, and again ending up with the mid-range systems, the systems 34, 36s, and 38s. All of these communications are basically terminal emulation. There's nothing fancy about it. Okay. The types of terminal emulations that we'll talk about are 2780, 3780, the 3270 family of video terminals, and a couple of other types of video terminals that IBM has. which will be the 5251 and possibly the 3101. Starting with 2780, 3780, that's probably the standard of the industry. It's as much of an industry standard as you can have without some sanctioning body actually calling it that. It's been around for years. I think every mini and every mainframe vendor has such facilities. The rainbow solution with that is Poly BSC RJE. The additional features that it has that are probably key to this are the multi-file transmit. You can set up operations so that job control language and data can be in separate files, and you can create a queue or a list of files to be transmitted so that you could intersperse files containing JCL with files containing the data rather than have to combine everything into one file and send it. Data can be received either to the printer or to disk files for later printing or massaging. In addition to the standard facilities of the protocol, we do allow the adjustment of some parameters such as timeouts or retries so that you can compensate for cases where a mainframe may be exceptionally slow in responding. And for diagnostic facilities, it incorporates a line trace and statistics concerning link errors. 3270 communications. It's a mess. Trying to go into it just a little bit, but not too deeply. There's basically three environments that a 3270 can be in and communicating with a mainframe. There's an environment where you have a single 3270 in a remote location. The second environment would be a cluster of 3270s in a remote location. And again, these remote locations would communicate with the host by serial communications links using either a BiSync or an SDLC type of a protocol. And finally, in the home office, you'll have your terminal farms, clusters of 3270s, which are connected to the controller, which in turn goes directly into the mainframe. In the environments in which we're connected by sync lines, it's right about the just below the middle of the slide, using the single terminal remote, the remote cluster. Those cluster controllers talk to the 3725 or 3705 front-end processor, which pretty much concentrates the terminal input and relieves the host from processing that at the slow speeds. The local solution over at the right-hand side feeds directly into the mainframe via an I/O channel which runs on the order of megabits per second. Typically, you would find about 32 terminals attached to each cluster controller in that type of an environment. Poly BSC 3270 is our answer to the single terminal remote using a BiSync protocol. It emulates the 3271, 3275 control units, as well as the 3274 when it's operating in a BiSync mode of operation. The screen that it emulates is the 3277, and the printer it emulates is the 3287. It has the capabilities of passing data from the screen to a disk, which can be useful for capturing the data, again, for later display or editing. Or if there's no printer defined and you need to print the data, you could route it to the disk first and then print it after that. Disk-to-host capabilities allow you to use script files. You can write a script which will allow you to take the input data from a disk file, display it on the screen, and then either pause so that the user can edit it if necessary, and then manually cause it to be transmitted. Or it has an automatic mode where it'll just put the data right up on the screen and simulate the pressing of the enter key and transmitted directly to the host. Diagnostic-wise, we have a loopback test and a line trace facility, which will actually get the things formatted for you. It keys on such items as timeouts, NACs, etc. And there is a statistics gathering capability. This product supports, as well as the standard point-to-point operation for a single remote, it supports multi-point operation also. Next we hit protocol converters, which sometimes get maligned, but in reality they have their place, and they can be a very useful device. They can be cost-effective, or you may need to use them in a pinch, like we do when we don't have any slots. The probably most important set of protocol converters that I see from the Rainbow perspective are those that will emulate a 3278 terminal. The terminals communicate via coax lines to the control units, and they run at speeds of around 2 or 3 megabits. Following companies are just a few of the companies that actually have these protocol converters out. They're all relatively cheap, around the $900 price range. They take essentially a VT100 type of a data stream at the PC end, and when it comes out the other end of the box, it looks just like a 3278 data stream. They're all pretty much similar in their capabilities, with the exception of Avatar, who has a unique feature in that they have a second RS-232 port on their box, which would enable you to use a Rainbow connected to an Avatar in a situation where you needed to communicate to an IBM system through a control unit or through a VAX, through an asynchronous line. To fill in the gap in the single terminal remote cluster controller emulation, just run across a couple of products within the last few months. There's a product called SNA-P from Modems Plus, who is in Atlanta, Georgia, and a product from, I believe it's a Swedish company, Inca Computers, the Programmable Interface Translator, which in addition to being able to emulate a 3270, they claim that it can also handle a number of other emulations. Cluster controller emulation. Be typically used in a branch office where there might be 4 or 5 people who need access to 3270 terminals. As you can see, there's a number of products that in this field. One special one is the Hydra from Diversified Data Resources, and they appear to be about the only company so far that I've found that offers a product that can be used in the home office environment also, where the control units are typically attached directly to a mainframe I/O channel. And these products can typically support 4 terminals and upwards. .5251, that is the terminal which is primarily used for the System 34, 36, and 38 environment. There are a couple of different types of connections involved here, and between these 4 protocol converters, they cover them both. One is a remote connection over SDLC type lines. The terminal that does that is the 5251 Model 12. And there are local attachment environments using twin-ax communications lines which emulate the 5251. I should also mention that 5251 type of emulators can also be used to communicate with the 5520. Briefly, some other systems which we can connect to by protocol converters. There are products out there for Honeywell, Sperry, NCR, Burroughs Pole Select. Those are all hardware solutions. And for software-wise, we can communicate with HP and DG through BLAST from Communications Research Group. some more software products which can connect to other systems. Polycom, in addition to the digital, they have connections to IBM, Tandy, and others. Modem, crosstalk. Two somewhat special purpose ones down at the bottom by Cawthorn is the Telex Link and the Computer Telex Link. Okay. Finally, a few other things. There's an Ethernet board. Slide is a little bit confused. It's put out by Univation. The name of the board is the UniNet card. That's sold for, I believe, $750. It can be used in the Rainbow 100 or 100 Plus. Fits between the Winchester controller and the motherboard. I say it can be used. We have not evaluated it, so anyone who uses that at this point is at their own risk. Univation claims it works. I make no such claim other than it's available. Fusion is the product, and it's not related to XNS too much, but it's implemented by Network Research. They do have facilities of software that will run on the VAX as well as on the Rainbow, and that can be purchased either from Network Research or from Univation. And finally, OmniNet by Corvus. And that's the end of the prepared presentation. Again, there is a technical session following at 11, and I'll take any questions and answers that you have now. If there's something that you can't get to me right now, I'll be at the booth this afternoon from, I believe, 4:30 to 9, whatever the graveyard shift is. Okay, thank you.
Please state your name and affiliation first.
Bill Rich, Scientific Atlanta. I missed the DECnet on the Rainbow speech. Is this require extra hardware, or is it just a software package you can buy?
It's strictly software packaged. There are a few hardware requirements in terms of memory and disk space.
Right. Okay. Well, since it's software, we have several Rainbows. We also have some IBM PCs. Would it be able to run on an IBM PC?
I hate to admit it, but there is a product which will run on an IBM PC, yes, called DECnet DOS.
From Digital?
From Digital, yes.
Bob Badger from Baker and Daniels. Does DEC plan in the future to put Rainbows on Ethernet? Have a DEC supported Ethernet board?
As far as a DEC-supported Ethernet board, we're thinking along the lines. What we would probably do if we were to throw the Rainbow on the Ethernet would be to look towards qualifying the Univation board as to its usability and goodness within the Rainbow, rather than to try and design a brand new board from scratch ourselves.
Okay, thank you.
Doug Lindhout from the Amway Corporation. Quick question on just a little clarifying here. You mentioned the 4300 is one of the IBM target systems. Was that specifically the 4300 or the entire series?
The whole series.
Okay, thank you.
Jim Nash, Albion College. I would like you or somebody in the audience to tell me what can be done to get a Rainbow to emulate a VT220.
I think I'm going to pass that to somebody in the audience.
How many need that capability?
Very nice. Looks like a 220.
Anybody going to answer his question?
I can only offer one suggestion if you have a bunch of VAXs, and that's, I believe, the Rainbow Office Workstation does have 220 capability.
My name is Ed Eichert. I'm from American Cyanamid. We use Polygon Associates product to transfer files into Princeton from around the world, and have immense trouble with files containing odd-length records, namely the last character of the record keeps getting pushed over into the next one or dropped depending on which even length it chooses to use. Is the problem going to be fixed?
This is the first I've heard about it.
It's extra,
It's an
but
extra.
it's all bundled in one package. It's a real problem. We have called it in to both companies. I can repeat it on any day of the week you would like it repeated.
Okay, why don't you catch me afterwards? Okay.
Pat Scoplety, Corning, McGlass. Let's see, a sample scenario. We have 3 or 4 or 5 rain SIBOs. They run in Lotus 1, 2, 3. If I put on DECUS on each of them, can I have all of their normal Lotus printed out but put routed to a VAX printer queue, which would then print out on a local LN03 or L800, whatever?
I believe that's true.
Without any.
You would define your local printer to be on the VAX, and from that point on, it's transparent.
Thank you.
John Stewart, Minnesota Association of Commerce and Industry. Are you aware of any communications products between the Rainbow and TSX Plus?
No, I'm not.
Yeah, thank you.
I actually have a question, but I'd like to ask a counter question about the VT220 emulation, which is that is anyone who's having problems with that having problems using a Model B Rainbow or a Rainbow Plus, because I find it does the sorts of things that I want to do, which is basically understand the 8-bit character set, which includes the character command sequence introducers and things. That's not my question, that's my counter question. Is anyone having that problem with the Model B Rainbow? I think that may tell you when you can get VT220 emulation then, which is now.
Can't download character, can't download keys.
Okay, the answer is you can't download keys from the host.
One of the
to Rainbow.
characteristics of the VT220 is that the row of function keys up at the top, I believe, are programmable.
And that's not true of a Model B Rainbow.
No. No, sir.
Okay, now for my real question. I assume that this is an okay way to handle that.
We'll find out.
Yeah. My question is that for emulating a VT240, the generally accepted approach is to buy Polyregis, and this product specification says that it requires Polycom software to support that. Is that literally true, or can other communication software packages provide it the support it needs?
I believe that is literally true. I think they worked some magic between their two products to do that.
That means then that it's not generally practical to write local software on the Rainbow that would directly drive Polyregis?
I believe it can be done, yes.
We're also doing terminal emulation without Polycom software.
Okay, you said that you are doing terminal emulation using non-Polycom software to drive Polyregis. What are you using? Okay, LC term works fine.
The problem there is you don't get to see your LC term menu
Because they're not...
video calls that go straight to the video round.
Okay, that sounds like then if you use a terminal emulation that drives fairly high-level terminal stuff, you're going to win. And if you're doing brutally fast things, okay. All right, that answers my question beautifully. Thank you.
Before I take the next one, let me just put out a little bit of clarification/warning to the question of using Lotus on a bunch of rainbows connected to a VAX. I don't know exactly how Lotus gets at the printer. I suspect if it tried to get at it directly that it wouldn't work. You were probably going to have to add the caveat that they be well-behaved applications again, unless Dave can clarify that further.
That's basically the right clarification. We don't have the virtual printer support tied into all the ways that programs know how to get at the printer yet. We'll take care of that as soon as we can.
Larry Moody from Carolina Eastman. I have a question on your slide concerning the 3270 cluster controller emulation. I didn't get all the devices written down, but I'm looking for a box that will go between a VT200 series terminal or Rainbow and an IBM running SNA as opposed to SDLC. And on your slide, was there a device so specified?
Yes, although at this point it would look at the VT220 as a VT100.
Right.
It's the SNA-P from Modems Plus in Atlanta,
Okay.
or the one from the Swedish company called the Programmable Interface Translator.
Okay.
You
Thank
can
you.
catch me afterwards if you need any more.
Rick Iliopoulos from Naval Ocean Systems Center, San Diego. I'd like to present the scenario and see if you can tell me the problem. Using Polycom software, talking to the remote host, I have a screen of special graphics displayed, special character graphics. And I use the Control P key to print to my printer, or I'm prepared to display this file of special graphic characters. It comes down to the Rainbow properly on the screen, but the escape sequences seem to be lost going to the printer.
I'm afraid I don't know the solution to that problem. It sounds like perhaps there's a problem in with Polyterm.
In Polyterm, right. That's a DCS product, is that correct?
Yes, it is. Yeah, that would be my first guess. I've not heard about this before, though.
Rick, are you running 8-bit on your Polyterm when you configure it? Because if you run 7-bit and use 8-bit commands, it won't work.
Judy Simons, Garrett Turbine. We bought Polyterm, actually from the whole package, about a year ago and have not been able to use it because it will not run with the half-duplex driver. Has that been fixed?
Probably not. I'm not aware of the ramifications in and around that, and really this is the first time I've heard of such a thing.
I brought it up last year, too.
Have you spoken to Polygon
Directly.
about this?
Yes.
What did they tell you?
How much would we like to pay?
I see. Okay. I gather from that point it has not been fixed, no.
Ken Yin from Kent State University. Could you elaborate a little bit more on well-behaved programs?
Well, I think what we're basically talking about when we say well-behaved is one that uses the facilities provided by the operating system to do everything and does not try and get at the hardware itself or take advantage of our extended BIOS calls to get faster screen performance, etc.
Thank you.
Fortunately, it seems to be a little bit of a paradox that some of the top programs that we were pushing take advantage of the hardware and therefore are not well behaved and will not be able to run in some of these environments like using Switch or using the virtual printer capabilities that you can get with DECnet Rainbow.
Thank you.
George Hauser, Fauski and Associates. I'm not exactly sure what people mean by full-blown VT220 emulation, but one thing I have noticed is, at least with my version of Kermit 86 that you were talking about, this is a CPM version, that it faithfully sends all the function key codes to the host. I don't know if that's really all that you need, if the host sees that and it actually programs that key in itself rather than in the micro.
I think at that point your application would have to handle those specifically. The thing
Okay.
on the real VT220, I believe you can actually tell it to
change what comes
change
out?
what comes out on
Okay.
those function keys. Yes.
Yeah, I'm Richard Stefanowski with Allen Bradley. On the DECnet for the PC, I assume you run a program that installs all the drivers. From that point on, your node can, if someone wants to copy a file from your PC, do you have to initiate any type of command to transfer it to him, or can you just acquire it without user intervention from your PC?
I'm going to look for help there. This is Dave Mitten. He's one of the chief architects for the DECnet DOS product sets from the Networks and Communications Group.
The answer to your question is yes. You have to initiate something on your Rainbow. Because of the nature of networking and personal computers, we decided that it was very difficult to actually put any sort of background tasking into your PC. Besides that, you don't want your PC cycles to disappear because someone decided to snatch a file off your system. So it's up to you to initiate any transfers to or from your Rainbow or PC.
Or how are you notified that someone wants that file? Does he have to walk over and request it? Thank you.
It's a foolproof method, I guess. Yeah, okay, in case anybody didn't hear, the answer is that whoever wants that file from you or wants to give you the file is going to have to go over there and tell you about it himself.
Bob Riley from Dickinson College. I just came in, so I'm not sure if this question was asked earlier. If it was, please tell me. We have apparently a program that is not so well behaved. The SAMNA Word 2, the whole SAMNA product line of word processing seems to do something strange to our printer port and therefore our communications port. When we try to access the communications port after printing a file from SAMNA, the Rainbow is effectively locked up, and the only way to clear it is to turn off the power and do a hard reboot. If we remember, after we do printing from SAMNA after exiting, if we remember, we can do a soft reboot, and that saves us having to turn the power off and going through all that process. But it's a rather annoying problem where we do have 100 Rainbows in a network connected to a VAX system. Is there some simple macro program, assembler program that could be written to reset whatever SAMNA is screwing up so that the MS-DOS operating system is reset and subsequent access to the communications port don't cause this problem?
I'm not exactly sure. I sympathize with it. I occasionally forget to do setup, control setup myself. We'd have to look into that. One of our firmware experts is here. He will be at the question and answer session on Thursday. I will try and speak to him before that, but if not, if you could maybe come by. There may be actually a way to write a program which could possibly jump somewhere into the firmware that might cause a reinitialization or simulation of those keys. That's the only suggestion I can have.
Is the problem, in fact, that SAMNA is going directly to the printer port, bypassing MS-DOS? That's speculation we've had, or do you not really know what the specific problem is?
I don't really know, but that would be my guess.
Are there some names of people you could give me to try to track down in case I don't get to this this technical Q&A?
Yeah, Wayne Letter is the firmware.
Ledder?
Yes.
Wayne Letter. Okay, thank you very much.
Okay.
This is the end of this cassette. Please advance the tape as far as possible for the next playing.